Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. Got my friend Tu Lamb of Ronin Tactics. Tu, I appreciate you taking the time today to join us for a little bit. We got our technical difficulties worked out. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Mickey. Thanks for having me on.
I'm glad that we were able to find a hole in your extremely busy schedule. You're like on TV now and teaching people and traveling all over, so it's fantastic. We were just talking before we started recording. You were mentioning the Knife or Death, the TV show. Right. How's that going?
Oh, it's going great. The first season actually did really well. From the History Channel, the ratings that I got, we were second on the network. So we're rated number 2 on the network and rated number 12 throughout all the networks. So
awesome.
We're really good for like a pilot season. So I'm really looking forward to season 2.
Is it going to be the same format, or are they changing anything?
From what I heard from the producer is that they're making the competition harder. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah, they're going to readjust the obstacles and stuff like that. So I actually wanted them to sheath it and climb up a 15-foot rope and hack stuff. And they're like, no, there's a safety thing here. So it's going to be interesting to see once I hit the ground over there.
Did anybody get hurt at all in the first season of filming?
They're really, they have a lot of safety equipment on. There's a lot behind the scenes, like paramedics. Mm-hmm. Doctors, but what I seen was there was bad heat treatment on some of the blades, so the blade battered.
Oh,
yeah,
little bits of metal flying.
The whole blade just broke in half, and
okay,
parts of the blade is spinning towards the crew, that's filming. And then I saw some guys misjudged their swings, their angles of attack. So when they hack through, let's just say a piece of ice, right? When they hit the ice, their wrists would limp, it'll change the trajectory of that blade. And guys, they have hit their thighs before. Yeah, but the cool thing is they had like these thigh shields on, even though they hit their thighs,
okay. Didn't hurt themselves.
No, but I've seen a couple that I was concerned that they're going to fall on their blades.
Yeah. Did you say anything like, hey, I know this isn't my part of the show, but I just gotta.
Yeah, I told them about footing, because, my military experience, we have to shoot in the mud and all that. So mm-hmm. I just, hey, don't lose traction with the ground. You always got to you have to have contact with the ground, especially when you're moving with a blade.
Mm-hmm.
Speeds, right? So, they end up taking some of my advice.
Good. So that's pretty cool that a guy goes, and we'll talk in a second about how you ended up in the U.S., but a guy goes from where you started to now on a TV show, broadcast around the world, and living the American dream. Let's talk about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, being an American is probably the greatest experience. It's one of my top accomplishments. When I say that is, you can come to this country as a refugee and you can apply for the paperwork to become in paperwork, an American citizen.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, that's not what makes American. You see, Mickey, that's not what makes it American. This country wasn't founded on people coming here and putting in the paperwork and calling themselves Americans. Americans are the ones that sort out and for that higher purpose, right? To fight and to make this world a better place, a cesspool of different cultures and religions coming together in the land of the free, and be able to defend it and protect it, and that's how we want our independence.
Mm-hmm.
We came over here, and Americans are fighters.
Yeah,
that's why our country is where it's at, because we're willing to fight for the things we believe in. And so that's why I was saying, one of my major accomplishments being American is because, when I swore my right hand allegiance to become an American when I was 13 years old, that really resonated with me, and it stuck with me. So that's the importance of being American. And I think that we're starting to lose that in today's world.
You oftentimes, when you write things that you post in your social media feeds, like you talk a lot about where you came from in Vietnam. Your family fled after the fall of Saigon, right? There's a lot of young people that listen to this podcast and follow our stuff. I think a lot of people don't understand what happened in Vietnam after the U.S. pulled out, and all that we had done there just was for naught after the communists marched into Saigon and just murdered and tortured people.
Yeah.
And that's where you guys were at, right?
That's right. I was born in Saigon.
Okay.
The majority of my family were South Vietnamese military. So, like, my uncle was a officer in the Navy, a few lieutenants in the Army, the Vietnamese Army. My aunt married an American Special Forces. So we were really tied in to the military.
And just so our listeners and viewers understand, South Vietnamese, that we were their allies in the fight against the North and the communists. So you're directly tied to the people that the North are coming to get, right?
Yeah. They wanted to, it's Civil War, they wanted to make one Vietnam under communist rule. Of course, the South Vietnamese are not communism. The Americans got involved. It was the Cold War, against Russia back there for America. So we had interest in fighting the communist ideologies. The problem with that is, we can't sustain a war for too long, the Americans, and I think we see that in Iraq, we see that in Afghanistan. I mean, think about how long we've been in Afghanistan. There's so much you can only change, and America going over there, force multiplying, supplying and equipping the South Vietnamese, and by, with, and through conducting combat operations against the communists, well, you can only sustain that so long.
Mm-hmm.
And, the government, the country pulled out. I was born in 1974. Saigon fell to the North Vietnamese in 1975. So I was truly, when I say I was born in war, I was born in war. My whole life it's been war up until now. This is my first peace. This is my first time in my life right now where I found my peace. I know that you and I, we spoke about where Colorado, and how beautiful it is here. But when you find that peace, you got to hold on to it.
Mm-hmm.
So just a little bit about my background so people understand is, I was born in Saigon, Vietnam. 1974, Saigon fell to the North Vietnamese. The North Vietnamese were communist ideologies. They were backed by the Soviets. They wanted an independent Vietnam underneath communist rule. The Americans pulled out in 1974. If you read the textbooks in history, right, you saw what the Cameroons did. You seen what the North Vietnamese did when they came in. They pulled people out. Literally, there was not enough bullets to kill the South Vietnamese, so they would take the South Vietnamese, my people, and pull them out in rice paddies and put bags over their heads and suffocate them, because they didn't want to waste a bullet on the South Vietnamese.
It was just genocide.
It was genocide. But you read about Soviet doctrine, right? Because when I first joined the Special Forces, the Soviets were still in that Cold War stage. So I had to study a lot of Soviet doctrines. And, any Soviet or communist government that comes in, they're going to take out the leadership. They're going to take out the education, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody in any political power, and they're going to either imprison you or they're going to kill you, because not everybody lives in a civilized country where we have rules of engagement and everything else, right? I thought that the enemies had no rules of engagement, but we had rules of engagement, but the enemy had no rule of engagement. So when the North Vietnamese came in, that's just the way that they're going to take over, right? That's how they're going to establish the communist ideologies. Now, if I was going to be raised in Vietnam, I would have had to been recruited into the North Vietnamese army. That's just communism. And my grandfather told my mother at a very young age that there's no way my two grandsons, will grow up to be a communist. So he took his life savings and gave my mother some money and smuggled us out of country. So imagine making a small fishing boat, okay, overstuffed by hundreds of people. And imagine like thousands of boats trying to leave Vietnam, right? So people were walking out, people were catching planes. I was on the boat, so I was the boat people, right? So
what year was that? What year was that? How old were you?
I was 2 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen the pictures of you, you little cute kid there, and mom dragging you out.
Yeah. You know what I love about that picture is that my mother showed me that picture years later. And you know, I seen the picture growing up, but what I love about that picture of me being an immigrant and kind of holding that sign was that I was smiling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I would, you know, now that I retired out of the military, I would kind of look back through my life, and I would look at some photos of, you know, missions I've been on. And I always had that smile, no matter how hard things got. You know, I always had that little smile because it's hope. I always had hope, no matter where you put me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at that picture, if anybody understands that picture, we were homeless. We had nothing.
Yeah.
We had no money. We only had the clothes on our back, and we had many people try to kill us. Many people. Now, when I say that, Mickey, is when we escaped, we had, you know, the pie tree going on, you know, the bandits.
Mm-hmm.
You think about everybody's leaving, they brought their life possessions with them, right? Whatever they had on them, whatever they can carry. Well, these bandits would, these small fishing boats would try to leave Vietnam to try to go to Indonesia, you know, wherever, Malaysia, wherever they can find refuge. These bandits would come in and they would interdict the boats. So basically they'll board the boats, kill the men.
Rape and pillage.
And when I say that, that's literally what they're doing. They're raping and pillaging and stealing. And somehow we navigated past that. By the luck of God, we navigated past that. We went into Indonesia, off the coast of Indonesia, where the Coast Guard stopped us. They shot at us, and they anchored our boats on and pretty much drug us back out into the ocean.
Wow.
Shot our engine, cut the line, literally left us there to die. Because
it's just not our problem.
Not our problem. Don't want you in our country. Don't want any issues. We don't care to take care of you. We have no more room for refugees. We're going to kill you. Well, we're going to stop you from coming in our country. And if faith decides you're going to die, then so be it. You know
what's interesting? I want to add something there. Like I hear people now constantly, like we'll see terrible video of like some street violence, right? This stuff's posted all the time on the internet, and people will comment like, what's happening to the world? It's such a violent place. It's way worse than ever. And I tell people like, damn, I don't know if you like look at the history books at all. We're only talking like 40 years ago. You're talking about 45 years ago, right? Something like that. And there's a maritime policeman, the Coast Guard of a country, drug a group of refugees out to sea to die. Like that was totally normal. And I'm sure just like what's happening now, like with Syria, people trying to flee these countries, there's just too many people. So like that was the answer. That shit doesn't happen here. Like we don't do that, but that's what I think people like here in America don't get. And you alluded to that a moment ago, like these other countries don't play like we do. And that's totally normal.
Yeah, people are still getting enslaved.
Mm-hmm.
People are still getting hacked up by machetes. I mean, hundreds of people, villages.
Mm-hmm.
And me being a former Green Beret, I travel around the world. And I have to fight for those defenseless, you know, the oppressed libera, our motto, to free those oppressed. So we have to travel to different continents around the world to free those oppressed, to help those people that was once me, you know. And people ask me, well, why Green Beret too? Well, if you understand my childhood, then you understand why.
Mm-hmm.
So de oppressor liberator, to free those oppressed. And the thing is, when they drug us back out to the ocean, they shot us. My mother told me upon my retirement from the military, she would clue me in more details, and she said there was a Coast Guard that looked at me when they're anchored, because they have to send one guy on to anchor the boat, to anchor the line, and they didn't know what they're doing at gunpoint. So the Malaysian Coast Guard boarded the ship. They had everybody at gunpoint, and one of the Malaysian Indonesians would anchor the line on so they can pull us back out of the ocean. Well, my mother said that I came up and tugged on the line. I was playing with the line or something, and then the guy grabbed me and hugged me. But the expression on his face is, "I feel sorry for you."
Mm-hmm.
You know what's going to happen, right? So when they drugged us back out of the ocean, they knew what was happening. Like the Vietnamese people knew what was happening, so they were screaming, right? And when they drugged us back out of the ocean, they shot our engine and cut the line, left us there to die, pretty much. Now, my mother said we drifted. We drifted and drifted. We got caught up in some storm, right? But before the storm, people were dying, you see, because we were dying of dehydration, lack of food. Imagine those documentaries that you see on the slave boat, the ships.
Yeah, that's what it made me think of.
Yeah, so imagine that, down
People in their own filth.
and so we're piled on top of each other down into the lower deck of the ships, right? And we're dehydrated, and we're basically dying. So the older people, they're dying, right? And when they die, they'll throw them off board, right? So you talk about the ultimate story of survival when I hear this from my mother. That people would drink their own urines, right? To just try to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother said there was a storm that came in, a huge storm, and people were throwing buckets and everything out on the top of the deck to collect water. And somehow the storm pushed them further and further out into the ocean. But somehow they pushed them into Russian waters, where a Russian supply boat was crossing, right, to go into Singapore, to dock in Singapore. Well, this is my first lesson on humanity, you see, because those Russians saved me. Those Russians stopped their boat and pulled us off of a abandoned ship with no motor, took us on board. The doctors looked at us and took us to the nearest dock, which was Indonesia, right? Threw us out of refugee camp. Now, Mickey, that was the same ideology that took me out of my country, right? The communists.
Yeah.
So when I heard the story, when I was old enough to comprehend the lesson, that was truly my first lesson in humanity. You see, because they overlooked that we were, we're South Vietnamese. They overlooked that. They overlooked that we're not the communist ideologies. They overlooked the war. They saved me because we're human beings, and that resonated with me more than I knew throughout my whole life. You see, because
people saving other people. None of the political shit mattered at that moment, and
it's the higher purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when you talk about higher purpose, when I say that resonated with me is I dedicate my whole adult life, to enter these foreign countries to protect what once was me. You see, the defenseless, the oppressed, and that's why I eventually became a Green Beret, because that allowed me to travel to these foreign countries that people would never know about, right? Fighting these rebels or suppressing rebels or enabling rebels to overthrow a government that's oppressing them, right? So that's the Green Beret's mission. So that's what drove me to eventually become a Green Beret, to move in these countries and free those oppressed and fight for the people that was once me. But when they picked us up, they docked us in Indonesia. Like I told you, my aunt married an American Special Forces lieutenant. He was able to expedite the paperwork. we got over to America. My first place was Fayetteville, North Carolina, which
Oh
is
wow.
right outside Fort Bragg, home of
Yeah.
special operations. So I was raised in the backwoods of North Carolina, you know, and my mother eventually remarried to American Special Forces sergeant. Eventually, he became my stepfather. At 8 years old, I was running through the backwoods of North Carolina, navigating the stars, learning how to take apart weapons. You know, he wasn't teaching me to be a Green Beret. He was just hanging out. We're just spending father and son time together, right? But that's what he knew. So what he didn't know was he was kind of molding me into a future soldier, and I didn't even know it. And you know, at that time, but I felt a strong connection to the Green Berets, right? Because you know, not just that. You know, my grandfather. Neighbor was a Sante Raider, which was a hostage rescue mission to free prisoners by the Green Berets, right? So on the original Sante Raiders in Vietnam. So I was raised around that. You know, those were my role models, Mickey. You know, we didn't have like reality TV and all that back then, right? We didn't have very much role models, right? Besides, because the information age wasn't there. So my role models was that. You know, it was the true American heroes, the ones who fought for this country. So when I became 18, there was no, back when I joined the military in 93, there was no direct hire into the Green Berets. There was no SF baby program. So you had to be E5 before you can even apply. So I went through the long range reconnaissance unit when I first joined, the amphibious units. And then when I turned 20, I applied for the Special Forces at 20, 20, and then at 21, I made it to the A teams.
Very cool. Better to make your pops proud.
Yeah. He, he was there. He saw me grow through my evolutions, you know, in my career. So, like I said, he was always a big supporter and role model.
You know what's so cool about, I've got fortunate to have a handful of friends that came from these different teams, and people that don't fully grasp like geopolitics. They look at some of America's actions around the globe and they look at it purely from a political sense, but they don't get, here's a dude that could be working at a tire store or being a professor at a college or just living some nice life, is sleeping in mosquito infested swamps and freezing his ass off, traveling the world. People don't know you're there to do what you said, provide freedom or the pathway to it for people that, I don't want to say don't deserve it, but you owe them nothing, right? And that I think is like the true essence of what America really is. That's what you were talking about at the beginning of our discussion here. People don't fully grasp. While there's other countries like in Europe that supply military aid, nobody does what America does. Nobody sends secret super soldiers around the globe to free people that nobody cares about. When I say nobody, I mean it's just the world as a whole. But we do. And we do it. Our tax dollars fund the training. Our tax dollars fund the existence of you guys. So that's pretty amazing when you think about it. And I think people don't fully grasp that. They think that, they look at it, oh, it's because of oil or trade agreements, and there's some of that exists. But in the end, it's still grown men off doing bad things in the dark to save and free people that they don't even know. That's heavy shit.
Well, I tell you too, Mickey, not just besides being American and going through what I've gone through, I'm a student of the martial arts.
Yeah.
And through mind, body, and spirit. So all three levels, not just the physical aspects of martial arts. I do believe in the spirit side of it, and that spirit guides us to do things. Now, the martial arts is all about the higher purpose, the Bushido, the way, the warrior, the code and ethics that guides us. Now, Bushido, truly means to readily accept death, right? For your cause, your aim, your higher purpose, whatever it is, For samurais, it was war to protect their lords, right? So for me, My higher purpose is to fight for humanity. You see, when you're affected by war at such a young age, something fuels inside of you like fire. So my Bushido beliefs and with the ethics that involved with that, when I say ethics, is honor and dedication, courage, and all that stuff that's the guideline, the basic guidelines to do the Bushido code, right? The Bushidos readily accept death. So how would you lay your life on the line for people you don't even know if you don't believe in the code?
Mm-hmm.
You can't, right? So being a martial artist had a lot to do with that as well. You know, because I compassion is a big portion of being a warrior. You know, and if you sit back and you watch all these people suffering, you don't do anything about it, and you feel so strongly about it, and you don't do anything, then you know what's it for, right?
Yeah. What kind of man are you at that point? I enjoy listening to some of the snippets that you post from your classes. I think it's something very much lost right now. We've got this explosion of like the training culture now in America. It's interesting. I get messages from like people in the UK or Australia, like, "Oh, you crazy Yanks and your guns," you know, and they if you don't live here, you don't understand. As you said, we are a nation of fighters for fighting for freedom, fighting for wealth, fighting for industrial creativity. You know, it's just everything comes from here. But we've got this explosion of training. A lot of it's military guys that have left service and they're trying to make a living. But it seems like many of them are teaching the application of the tools, but leaving out what you just talked about, the spiritual side of it. And that's like something that I cling to. It's something we talk about in our classes, like what kind of man do you want to be? If it's all just about the flashy weapons and gear and it's for naught, because in the end you're going to die anyway. So what is the purpose of your life? What is the if the fruit of my life is, hey, you guys got a cool basement full of guns and shoots all the time? Well, that's pretty futile. Futile indeed. So I think I talk about this sometimes with other instructors, and I see like their eyes glass over, like, what the hell are you talking about? And think, all right, well, either he doesn't get it, or some guys, maybe their ego, they don't want to, it's too hippy dippy, you know, for them. Like they're, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, you know, the way I look at it is this: with my students and how I approach things, I rather train the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the mind that wields the body. It's the mind that wields the gun, right? The weapon, whatever it is, the hands. If I'm teaching martial arts, empty hands. But you have to train the mind, right? Because what is your purpose? You know, when I ask people, I'm like, what is your purpose training? Is it protect your family? Is it just educationally be better? You know, why the lethal application? Because with lethal application, you understand this, Mickey, comes a lot of responsibility and a lot of judgment, quick judgment, right? Are you going to take this guy's life because he pushed you? When would you know when to take a life, right? When, because I can train a guy in lethal aspects, right, or a gun, right? And somebody breaks in his house and that adrenaline kicks in, he can't function, then you didn't really train that student.
Mm-hmm.
You just train the physical aspects of squeezing the trigger, sign live inside pig, but you didn't train the mental aspects of taking life. Because that any human that believes in some kind of religion, some kind of higher purpose, we respect life. So how can you say you respect life, you have compassion for life, when you can take life like that when don't even think about it? You know, and it took me a long time to come to terms with this. You know, because
talk about that for a minute. That is a dichotomy, and that's, you know, we hear that from people. Thou shalt not kill. You know, what's your synopsis on that?
Well, if you believe in a higher purpose, if you believe in some God, whatever who it is, you know, I believe in God, and I truly believe in God picks his warrior. If you think about, look at the Bible, God always had his warriors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like my life struggle was to put me in front of the evils of this country. You can't stop evil by disarming the individual. You stop evil by stopping that enemy, like stopping that evil, that source. And there's a book called it's a Japanese samurai who wrote it, and it was a book called The Living Sword. And The Living Sword talks about humanity and compassion, but he also talks about killing, right? And the samurai brings up this interesting topic where he says, if one person oppresses thousands of people and abuses them, and if you go in and you kill that one person, you stop that one person. So you save thousands of lives.
Mm-hmm.
You destroy the evil, the source of evil, but you save thousands of lives, right? So when I look at people and if I need to stop them, right, like the military, let's say put me in a country and we're looking to find, fix, and finish this high value individual that's a source of terrorism around the world, I consider that stopping evil. You see?
Mm-hmm.
And because he is a root of evil, I have to stop the person. So that's why I don't take it. To me, I never had issues with it because I made peace with it.
So unlike some men, that some of those actions don't haunt you now.
Yeah, I mean, you have your good days and bad days depending on what
Mm-hmm.
you, right? The census is such a strong thing, Mickey. You know, the sense is such a strong thing. When I say that is a smell can bring back a memory to me.
Sure.
A sound, a temperature, you see? But because I'm a student of the martial arts in Bushido, I can control those emotions. I can suppress them. See? And a lot of my friends that did the same thing I did, well, some of them are not doing too well. You know? Because in the end, when you fight evil, you're still human.
Yeah.
And you know, for me,
Toto. The fun of editing.
Yeah, I started getting really good at editing. I had to, because we started launching our training modules and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, it's doing really well. You know, and I'm really happy with that because I'm able to help a lot of people, even though I can't travel to their state, because
Yeah.
I do feel obligated, just like you. I see you and I follow you. You feel obligated to educate, right? And you do it in such a comical way, but it's so interesting. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, you know your shit. But the thing is, you know, it's kind of cool to see my peers, you know, and how they approach training and how they approach things, and then the bond that you build with other people in the community that's like-minded, you know. So it's kind of cool to see it.
Thank you. It's there's definitely like, for example, I've trained with many different people, and some of them I click with as a student and some of them I don't. And there's guys that friends of mine love, like, oh, you got to go train with this guy. And it's like, I don't really, like, I've been with them. I don't really dig it. And so, like, there's certain people that hate my guts. They don't want nothing to do with me, and that's okay. But then there's other folks just like yourself that, like, okay, I get what he's saying, and that makes sense. So I think we've got to have all of these different broadcast mechanisms. I think some people are way too serious about certain things as well.
Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, it's definitely a serious topic, but and we get very serious in our training. I've had grown men cry, but it's I think sometimes guys try to add a bunch of machismo to make it sound more badass. Yeah. You know,
everybody has their own way of teaching and stuff like that. Long as it serves the higher purpose, it educates others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and obviously, you know, there's a lot of guys in the industry that talk bad about others. I try to stay away from all that drama.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
It's not worth it. And, you know, if that's the way you feel, that's really your issue.
Right.
Issue. And if you really truly have an issue, you can reach out to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, we can do it like two warriors, or you can be an immature adolescents playing keyboard games, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing is, you know, I respect everybody until they show me that they don't deserve that.
We switch gears here from, no, it's okay. It's a good topic. It's funny because I get to come in contact with tons of different people, and I'm a pretty harsh judge sometimes. And I have to remind myself, like, hey, you're totally imperfect, meaning me. And so that try to bring myself back to a point of humility and humbleness from time to time, knowing that I'm just as big a screw up as the next guy at various points in life. But it's amazing to me how many people in this business bust balls, because what it comes down to so much of the time has no real relevance on whether or not it's going to make the student or the practitioner or the hearer better. You know, just like minutia, like, well, I don't like the way he does this. Who cares? You know, it's not like, oh, Two's teaching people to murder people illegally. Like, okay, I have a problem with that. I don't like the knife he uses. Who cares? You know, or I don't like that guy's dumb with but that's a lot of the argument. It's like this nitpicky ego-ridden bullshit that really comes down to, like, I'm prettier than she is.
Yeah.
You know?
And, you know, when I first started out my process to being a teacher, you know, I became a runner, you know, and it was an interesting story how I became a Ronin, you know, because people, they hear the word Ronin, but they don't truly understand what it means, right? Ronin
Sure.
is the master samurai, right? Obviously, samurais don't exist anymore. Their warrior culture is gone, right? But the Bushido and the ethics are there. You know, if you read Bushido, what it means, it's readily set death, like I said. But there's a code of ethics, and if you look at the ethics, they fall in line with the military ethics, right? The army values, and those are the same ethics that I carried through my whole career. When I got out, I was lost. You know, so you think about like 23 years of service, traveling to 27 countries, fighting for those oppressed. So I had a purpose. But where do you go after you get out, Mickey? You know, where do you go when you can't get on an airplane, fly in that country, and stop evil, right? Because that's what I done. That's my path. But what I realize is, if I would have chose to continue to do that with different organizations that wanted to hire me on, what's changed? Right? What's changed in my life? Because every evolution, you should be a better person, right? When you get older, you should reevaluate your life. If you're this 40-year-old unemployed guy, right, with no education, then you didn't evaluate your life accordingly through the process of your life.
Right on.
So when I reached out in my military career, I had an education, I had a lot of experience. So there was companies that wanted to pick me up, but they wanted me to go in these foreign countries and fight those wars, right? You know those organizations.
Sure.
So I owe it to my wife, right, to be a better husband, to be around. Also, I wanted to find my peace, and I want to enjoy life, right? I wanted to slow down a little bit, enjoy life. But in that process, I was lost, because I could slow down, enjoy life, but what is my purpose? Because anyone like us, Mickey, we don't have a purpose. That's when our life spins out of control.
Yeah, man.
We have to have purpose. So I dove back into the teachings of Bushido in the martial arts. And I remember picking up the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, right? And let me tell you about this Book of Five Rings. I'm sure you read it. Every warrior should have read it.
That's required reading for a Green Beret, is it not?
It is. Senju, Art of War, is really required reading.
Okay.
Miyamoto Musashi wasn't really required reading until I got to certain organizations, right?
Okay.
But I didn't really grasp his teachings at that time because I was focused on war. You know, in his teachings, he break it down, and any martial art break it down into the elements, right? The elements of the environments, like water, fire, ground, right? And each one of these have its own teachings. Well, what I didn't find, what I realized, Mickey, was I was full of fire.
Mm.
I hated for so long. You know, when you hate things for so long, you know, when I say hate, people, what do you hate? I hated the enemy, right? They killed my friends. Some of my teammates passed in front of me. You see, there is a personal connection with that, and there's personal fire and revenge that comes with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But that energy can spin you out of control. You see, when you're consumed by fire, you're consumed by hate. And that fire will fuel into everything else, right? Hatred for life, hatred for yourself, hatred for your accomplishment, you know, because you're what I realized is I need to suppress this. And through the teachings of the five rings and reading about fluidity and life itself, I realized that I needed to balance my life. I needed to balance my center, my core, right? Yin and yang, right? So I dove into the teachings of Miyamoto, and one of the things he said that really changed me, right? And I needed to hear it at that time. And if I tell you, you're going, no shit, too. But I needed to hear it. You see, because Miyamoto said, do not look for strength anywhere else than within. All your love, all your passion, everything comes within. Do not look anywhere else. You see, at that time when I was kind of depressed and lost, I was looking for strength everywhere else. I was looking at my wife, I was looking at my father, I was looking at my ex-teammates, but I wasn't looking at the most important person, who was me.
Right on.
So when I read that, that's when I closed the book and I realized who I am, right? I'm this trained human being in military and strategy and tactics. I'm this martial artist. So where do I go? Do I pick up the sword and continue to travel overseas and fight for those oppressed in these agencies and these companies, or do I walk my own path? So in the teaching, the Chinese saying is, a journey of 1,000 miles began with one step. So I started my steps as a Ronin, a masterless warrior. After all these years of taking commands from the government, fighting political wars, fighting for other countries, I decided to venture off in what I believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I drew from one of the ethics of a warrior, which was courage. The courage to set out and do the things you believe in. And that's when I became Ronin. You know, and that's where my path is now, is to travel, to teach, to educate, very much like you. Right? But, you know, like the Hollywood world got, and people say, well, how do you get involved with that? Well, you think about, like, my path right now is about internal knowledge, development, right? Because I fought everybody else for so long, I need to rechannelize my energy, right? So I need to focus on my evolution, my internal well-being. So during that process, I started educating myself more on the ways of Bushido, right, and the way of the martial arts. And when I came out, I became a teacher. Yeah, because I have a snapshot of the world that a lot of people don't have, Mickey. You know, who at 2 years old float around a wooden boat, you know, about to die, you know, where there's no hope in the middle of the ocean. I'll let you know that. There's no hope. Nobody's coming for you. There's no hope except for God. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
God's hand, regardless of what your religion is, whatever religion you're, a higher power guided that boat to safety, no matter how you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God, right? I owe my God that to be a warrior in order to fight for those oppressed, right? So I truly feel a bond with that. There's a tie in that, right? And you believe everything comes full circle, right? You believe in that, right?
Indeed.
Everything comes full circle, my friend. So if I didn't oppress those people, if I didn't fight against evil, then what was my life for? Why did God give me that chance? Why was I adopted by a special forces stepfather? Why was I indoctrinated? My uncle was special forces. My stepfather was special forces. All the neighbors around me were special. You see, I truly felt a connection and God was guiding me through a path. And if I didn't follow that path, well, I don't know what my life would be. You know, because my life experience is what drove me to be who I am. You know,
it's interesting the massive effect that minute decisions can have on the course of events of not only our lives but of others. You know, we see people that make flippant decisions, thinking I've got more time or whatever. It's whatever. Dave Harrington, do you know Super Dave Harrington? Dave says, everything's important, everything matters. Do the right thing at the right time every time. And the first time I heard him say that, it was like, oh, what the hell kind of a, you know, nonsensical thing is it? But like the more I thought about it, like at 2 years old, you didn't decide I'm going to grow up and be a warrior, but that changed and cultivated, as you told us, Dad teaching you things and being raised around that. But you could have decided I want to be a surfer. I want to go to Wall Street. But you didn't, and the choices that you made, I'm sure there is some guy somewhere alive that you've already taught in your couple years running Ronin Tactics. I'm sure there's some dude that's alive that went home to his kids or his wife or back to saved his partner because of something you taught him, because you decided. And that's so powerful when in what you're talking about is I think the essence of what I'm hearing is that decision making, understanding what's in front of you. And I'm sure there's things that you maybe would change, maybe you wouldn't, but you're here where you at because of the choices that you made and because you walked that hard road. That's powerful stuff. That's cool.
Yeah, and you know, mistakes in life is to be made. That's how you learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other people judge you for your mistakes, right? It's not the place to judge, Mickey.
Right on.
Awesome. It's your life lesson. It's your lesson in if you want to change or not. You see, so when other people go, oh yeah, well this guy, that's not your place to judge. See, and that's my teachings. I try not to judge people anymore because that's negative energy, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it's an easy trap to fall into.
It is, and that's where the path, and that's where that word Ronin means more than just masterless warrior. Right? It means masterless in other people's thoughts and opinions. An individual, truly an individual in your own thoughts and opinions. I don't get affected by what other people say. If people say, oh, I don't like to because of this, right? If they come up to you and say, I don't like to, it's this, well, that's your personal take if you want to listen to them or not. It's the weak ones that I find, the ones that can't fend for themselves. They're not successful, right? So they're able to quickly jump onto other people's, we call it bandwagons.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when I educate others, I try to educate them in individuality, to be free to think and do what you believe in, and to set the necessary stages in your evolution to prep you for that. Everybody wants to be successful, right, Mickey?
Right on.
But what's your definition of successful? A lot of my students, are having money, right? Well, I can tell you, money's not what makes you successful, right? You should plan for that because that gives you flexibility. Money gives you flexibility. It allows you to make decisions in life. If you're constantly trying to live, then you can't do anything else, right? But when you're successful, you have the flexibility to truly do the things that you enjoy or believe in, right? And like your success drives off on what you're doing right now. You're going around, you're educating people. Are you happy? And if the answer is yes, then you're successful, my friend.
Right on.
Right? So
I try to, you talked about it a minute ago, like self-analyzing. I try to audit myself, and it's not to me like all about is everything I'm doing like the best case scenario. But if I start to like have, I don't want to say just negative, but if I start to feel down, or what I'm doing isn't like the thing I should be doing. Well, I key into that, and it's like, all right, why am I feeling that way? You know, am I just tired from being on the road? Am I like, do I feel bad leaving my wife for another weekend? Like, I try to figure out what that is, because it seems like too many people just keep drudging along in a life that they don't want, but they don't figure out what it is that will affect the change and make them happy or provide them that feeling of success. Does that make sense?
100%. In the teachings of martial arts, that's your spirit, Nikki. That's your spirit talking to you, my friend. Right? Because let's talk about this. Let's say you get lazy for a month, right?
Sure.
You don't work on your body. Like, you just gave up, you're eating like shit, you don't work out. Because in the martial arts teaching, the body is connected to the mind is connected to the spirit. You can't have a powerful, strong spirit unless you have a strong body and mind. It's all connected.
Right on.
So say for that month, you eat like shit, you don't work out. Do you think that affects your mind? And how
Amen.
about how you feel about yourself, right? And then it affects your spirit, because if your mind goes, you know what, I'm not really happy, then your spirit will be affected by it, because you're not going to be motivated, you're not going to want to do anything, right? So when I approach things, I approach the principles of the foundations of martial arts, mind, body, and spirit. So when you feel negative about your life, that's truly your spirit talking to you. Right? Because
I think too many people hide from that voice. You know, they hear it, and then what do? They drink some more so they don't have to listen to it, or go find some random thing, the movies, sexual hookup, whatever, something to satiate, like in the moment, but never do the work to get the information to like tune in and key into what their spirit, as you're saying, is trying to tell them.
But there's nothing worse in life than to subdue to pleasure, right? So if your life just drives off on pleasure in sex, pleasure in drugs, pleasure, whatever it is, it's all temporary.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a temporary thing, you know? But if your life is driven off of purpose, that's a legacy. Because once you and I are gone, my friend, you think they'll remember your house and car and your you know, how many guns you own?
Right. Right.
I remember how many lives you changed and the impact that you made on this world.
Yeah, man.
So
yeah, that too. He sure had a sweet closet full of clothes.
yeah, it's a funny story. I showed up to History Channel, right? And he's like, I say, hey, what do you want me to wear? You know, because I'm, you know, people don't know, I'm really preppy, right? I'm well-mannered, well-dressed, because that's what I was trying to raise, right? Try to present yourself in the best ways possible. That's what my father told me, right? Like literally, I couldn't wear blue jeans to school when I was going to school. I had to wear slacks. You know, that's just the way it was for him. But the thing is this, man, is like when I showed up to the History Channel, they're like, bring whatever you want. So I brought all my preppy clothes, right? So I showed up and my preppy clothes, and they're like, Jesus, can you get down? You know, so they're like, give me a t-shirt. So I put on a t-shirt, like, geez, that's not a normal t-shirt, you know? So it was funny. It was like when I was talking to Bill, it was like, you know, we're talking about presentation and mannerisms and stuff like that. It's one of the producers like, yeah, I just never thought like what they perceived was the most badass of, you know, the badass guy of the three casts. They say, yeah, he's the most preppy and well-mannered guy out of all of them. Yeah, yeah. So, but you know, that goes against the misconception of what a warrior is, right? Sure. Because a lot of my friends that got out, they grow beards. Mm-hmm. Right? You think about the veterans, right? You think about like all the veterans, you know, they grow beards and they ride around Harleys and stuff like that, you know, but that's just a persona. And there's more to us than that, right?
Yeah, for sure, man.
There's passion, there's purpose, and there's integrity, and presentation and stuff like that. And the true guys that understand that is what I find is the successful ones when they get out.
I've been very interested to see, I'm involved in politics, as you know, and I don't remember, maybe it was like 10 years ago or so, I started to think about like how much our world would change after guys from your generation of service started getting out and taking up roles in their community, taking up roles in politics, roles in leading schools and so on and so forth. And now we're starting to see that, not to demean anybody. I'm not talking about a guy that just went and served for a couple of years, which is awesome, but guys that spent years and years in the upper echelons of service like that. And now I've got a handful of friends that are running companies that are, and they're not even related to like combat sports or martial arts, but all kinds of stuff. And so now their ideology, methodologies, thought processes are being injected into the general public, which is similar to what we had after World War II, where we had this huge explosion of American ideals and Americanism, and because we had all of these men that had learned to sacrifice, learned about what loss was, learned about what hope was, and then they came home, and yeah, you could say a bunch of them came home and drank too much, and that's always going to happen. But I think we're like on the cusp of another explosion, my opinion, of that love of Americanism and the idealism that made us what we are. What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you and I were probably raised, we're raised at the same time with putting our right hand over our heart and pledging allegiance to the flag and God, country. We love that. Where's that now?
Yeah.
So, when I used to watch TV, it was like the History Channel, Discovery Channel. It was about, the sacrifices that veterans made for our country. But you log on TV now, it's more of a reality shows. It's all these on TV with drama, and people are drawn to that, right? Mm-hmm. And when I watched it, I'm like, wow, what a poison. Yeah. What a poison to society. But, that's just the way America is. We have to bring back that mindset of what made us strong in the first place. First, Americans, you don't with Americans, okay? Because we found this country on war. Okay, and like, wrong, indifferent, what happened to Native American, I got it, man, But this country was found in war. Like when we became colonists, we were not even a military. Band of rebels. You see, band of rebels with no military training fought against the superpowers time and won. There's
shopkeepers and farmers, man.
Yeah, but you see, Mickey, it's replayed throughout history. It's really unconventional warfare. It's hit and run tactics. It's Sanju, Art of War's teachings. You see? Mm-hmm. Well, first, Americans are strong people. Our culture is strong, right? And our culture comes from the world, right? But the thing now is our culture in America is becoming softer because these wars are being fought overseas. You see? Back in when we fought for our independence, when, the Civil War, whatever, fighting against slavery and all that, Native Americans for land and terrain, we fought in our America, in our land, right? But now all these wars are fought in foreign countries. So they don't really see the line in the sand. Yeah. You see? The villagers back then, they loved their warriors because the warriors are the one that got on the horses and rode out and fought against the bandits or whatever combatant group. They could take away this village's freedom, this society. So the warrior class was really respected. The warrior class is not respected now because people has no connection with the warrior class. We're fighting these secret wars, right? Wars in countries that people never even heard of. Mickey, they sent me to countries I have no idea where it was even located. I had to break it out. You know, like where the is this country?
Globe to try to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like they sent me to Cameroon one time. I'm like, what? Cameroon? Where the I had to read it and do research on it and understand the rebels and the hardships of that country. Because you don't understand the hardships, then
Yeah.
really affect change.
It's kind of like people that grew up or live here in America where we can walk into any grocery store and just fill a shopping cart with like whatever our heart desires, don't appreciate that piece of meat in the package. They don't, it's not a four-legged animal that was walking around a week before. It's a beautiful piece of clean meat because they never had to go do that. And it's similar but dissimilar. It's that same almost selfishness, or not selfishness, and unappreciation, just because you're not exposed to that process of life and death, the process of like you said, you've personally lost friends, so that you being growing up that way, it's part of you. I had my daughter a couple weeks ago down at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And my eyes were misty the whole time walking through, and we rented some bikes and rode around the battlefields. And what struck me was that there were, I'm guessing, thousands of monuments, and they were all unique. Somebody would hire a local monument company to build a statue or a rock with an inscription on it, and each one of them was memorializing something. One of them was a dog that got killed. It was like one of the like the company's dogs that they had from the time it was a puppy, and this thing was in like 100 battles, and that's where it died. So somebody memorialized this dog. And then hundreds of monuments for mass graves of soldiers, or here fell Private so-and-so. And this was a backyard of a little town in Pennsylvania where like one of the bloodiest days in American history happened. And these people are making bread and cannons are going off 500 feet away. You know, so like fast forward to now. Oh yeah. Send those guys with the nods and cool suppressed weapons, and they can go deal with this shit far away. And then when they come home, we'll have a parade maybe, and brush it under the rug because it's dirty and we don't want to deal with it.
You know what people don't understand is like, a lot of those missions and operations will never be said, will never be talked about. So you never hear about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this war has been going on 17 years. I met some of the most heroic people that I ever met in my whole lifetime. Some of my most, closest friends were some of my heroes, my personal heroes, because I saw the sacrifice they made for their God and country.
Mm-hmm.
You see, when you love your country and you love your God so much that your life means nothing to the purpose of it, that is the energy that made America. That was the driving force that made us who we are as a country today. We're just losing that focus
through selfishness, greed, self-serving purposes. My grandfather was in the Navy in World War II. Before he died, my grandpa liked to write a lot, and he wrote a lot of poems. And he wrote a poem, and I don't remember it verbatim. One of these days I'll post the whole poem. But the premise of it was his recollection of what happened at that time in the 40s, how the country collectively came together. And basically, the premise of the poem was nation coast to coast became centric around a goal of defeating evil, and in the process became this amazing superpower, really truly based on the love of each other. And some people would see this when we put it on some T-shirts after his passing, and people would see it and think like, oh, well, that's kind of like altruistic, like it wasn't about love, it was about like about survival. And it was like, no, like that's really what it was. Like women building bombs and tanks and bolting together the engines that went in aircraft. Like that stuff wouldn't happen now. And then it's not because we wouldn't have to. It's just people they're not in the same mindset.
Yeah.
Say that?
They're not connected.
Yeah.
You see, because I understand when Ronald Reagan said that we're one generation from losing our freedom, right? One generation from our freedom being extinct. He's not a lie.
Yeah.
You see, I personally lived that. You see, I had my freedom taken away from me, at a very young age. So I know the realities of that.
Mm-hmm.
And by 23 years in special ops, I have been in the giving end of taking away evil and taking dictators out of their leaderships, their government. And I also been, on the other end of supporting presidents to suppress rebels. You know what I mean? So I've been on both ends.
Yeah.
And then I personally felt it myself when my freedom was taken away. You see, so that's the thing is people are so disconnected, right? They think that their kids and grandkids and stuff like that is going to grow up with freedoms. You see, your child, you already have in your mind that you should know that they're going to be raised in a different world than what you and I are raised in. Look at today, what we were raised in.
Yeah.
You see, when I first joined the military in '93, I kind of like felt really good about this country, as in I know where we're going to be in the next 5 to 10 years. Well, I can tell you, I don't know where we're going to be in the next 5 to 10 years now, because you ever read that book, The Next 100 Years? It talks about superpower. It talked about how Europe was a superpower of its time and how they lost their superpower. And the reason why they lost their superpower was they're trying to go out and expand their basically their civilization, right? So their society. They're trying to expand their ideologies. But when you have internal conflict and when you have taxes against the people and the people rising up and fighting, and you have internal conflict, you can never grow, right? Think about like a family who constantly have internal conflict. Well, what do you see that's going on in America?
Yeah, man.
You see what I'm saying?
I do.
We're having internal conflicts right now. And unless we can subdue it or change our mindset, brother, we're headed down the same road of losing our superpower. History repeats itself.
That is something that when you and I first hooked up a few years ago, you remember, that was something that I was thinking about like on a daily basis, to the point that it would cause me to lose sleep. I'd wake up. I started fixating on exactly what you're talking about, not out of fear, but it was like, all right, how can I affect this? How can I change this? So like one of the things I was doing was like helping some people get elected to office in our state and in our region that I thought could help. And I've kind of changed tact on that, because like that was me putting my faith in somebody else, which there's nothing wrong with that. These are good men, good women. Like, hey, you go do your thing. But then it came down to like, well, what can you do, man? Like you're like on the periphery helping these people get into a position to ultimately be able to affect something. And it came down to like me thinking like, well, what are you going to do? You're going to just sit and think about it? You're going to like watch everything crumbling and falling? You're going to listen to, the people on the news and guys like us at the coffee shop or at the bar complaining about how everything's a shitstorm? Or are you going to do something? And I kept thinking, well, what can I do? I'm nobody. And I'm not like bashing on myself, like being self-deprecating, but like, I'm not somebody with means where I can just throw money around and affect change. So like it came down to me, and this is kind of the basis of like this podcast and what we're talking about today. Like live the shit. The little sphere that we live in is like how we can affect change. I have a wonderful memory of a friend of mine's father who's since passed. He was just a good dude that lived down the street. and he would take time, little bits of 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, and like teach me how to clean the air filter on my dirt bike, or like fix my fishing rod. My dad was a bookworm, that kind of a guy, not the hands-on kind of a guy that I am. And he'd take these little snippets of time out of his busy day, even though he had a house of his own and kids and bills and all that, to show the neighborhood kid, me, stuff that I was looking for. And it meant nothing to him probably, other than I'll take a minute and show the kid how to fix his car or dirt bike or whatever. But years later, that was a guy that took the time to instill little bits of knowledge, but also compassion, actually caring about the community and not being so self-centered and so self-absorbed. And that's what we can do. Just give a little bit, damn it. It doesn't have to be 23 years of service like you. We're not all superheroes.
Well, I realized after my second year being a Ronin, because you should reflect back on your journey, right? So it's not all about the level of success. You have to look at the journey. And the journey was my first year, nobody knew me. I was just trying to educate people on who I am and what the martial arts, my perspective, my mindset. But what I realized now, especially now, is I get a lot of emails. I get overwhelming emails. I get a lot of messages on how I affect people and how to change their lives. I have definitely made a lot of Green Berets with the younger generation. But the thing is this, if you take your life experience and you're able to give that answer, right? Because I feel your energy, Mickey. You're giving me answers. I grow from you. When we talked last time, you see how you marinate on some of the topics. You see my spirit. I gave you some of my spirit, right? And that lives within you. Right, exactly. So when you affect other people's lives, you're affecting their spirit. So in one lifetime, you can live 1,000 lives, right? So you can affect 1,000 lives.
That's heavy, man.
And I tell you this, man, when I say that is, I know I have affected 1,000 lives, not just as a Ronin, as a former Green Beret. I have freed people from in slavery. I have freed people from genocide. I can always say that. And the thing is this, I know when I live my one lifetime, when I pass, I've lived 1,000 lives, because when you affect people's spirit and you affect they're willing to change and make them a better person. Isn't that what it's about? Isn't that why we started? Right? It's not about the money. It's about the lives we're going to change, so it extends further than lethal tactics.
I think too many people don't believe that they have the power to do that. You know what I mean? Who am I? What can I do? And it's got to start. You talked about it earlier. It's about that understanding of ourselves. So many of us, I think we shortchange ourselves and we don't think. My friend's dad, that little tiny thing, and I don't know if I fully articulated that, but at that point in my life, I needed that. And there's a dude that just did what maybe he did sense it and know it. I don't know. But too often I think we don't fully appreciate the ramifications of even small actions.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So I don't want to take up your whole day, man. I just glanced down at the clock. I was popping a picture of you to post up on Instagram later. And everybody that views this should know you, but we'll tag you and put some links up and such. Company's Ronin Tactics. Yes. Oh, you little screenshot action.
I can post you too, so thanks for that.
They can find you online, and you got classes all over the country. What's the website?
You can catch me on my website at www.ronintactics.com. You can also catch me on social media on Facebook at Ronin Tactics, and you can catch us on Instagram at Ronin Tactics.
Very good marketing, keeping everything the same.
Yeah,
I got to get out to one of your classes one of these days.
I would love to hang out with you.
Teach you about some knife fighting.
Yeah,
and...
please teach me.
I'm just kidding.
And
I tell people all the time when they talk about that shit, I say, I'm going to pick something up that's heavy and throw it at you and, and run away. The knife stuff, man. I play with that Colonel, though.
oh, that thing is brutal. It's a brutal blade. It's almost impossible to disarm. Because the mechanics of it goes off of the geometry of a punch, right? So the lines of a punch. And then you got your reverse punch, you get different angles, you know what I mean? So it's very hard and it's very simplistic for a person that doesn't really have the time to dedicate to the teachings of martial arts, right? So that's a great thing. It's just, if you understand lines and you understand angles, maybe, but still, maybe that's still a brutal blade, you know what I mean? Even to the trained.
And that's a pretty darn trained guy that the odds of that happening are slim to none.
Yeah.
And if that's the case and you're in that kind of a shitstorm anyway, then you're fighting for your life.
Yeah.
So anyway, I digress from that. I do want to get out to one of your courses. Maybe when you guys get back from one of your next trips, I'll chat with you, figure out where you're going to be.
Love to. And that's the great thing about us is, you know, you knew me since when I first started, you know.
Yeah, man.
This company, and we've been friends since then. So it's great to see you grow in your success and then your how you do things. I love seeing how you your approach to articulating your teachings, right? And you know, and different instructors teach different. You know, I'm more of a martial art, my approach. But what I love is seeing people like you, see my peers. That makes a difference. You know, and you started this podcast obviously to make a difference. You know, you're trying to educate people's mind, not just a gun, you know, not a knife, you know, because it goes further than that. The lesson's deeper than that.
I think we are doing everything we can. I appreciate what you just said, man. I think we're doing everything we can to try to push that message. And sometimes, what's the saying about the message appears when you're ready to hear it, you know, pretty much. Like, if I think too many times, like if what we're talking about right now, when I was 25 years old, I had no clue what we were talking about at 28, 25 years old.
You know, it's what I find is like I have different groups and ages of people that follow me. Like I did an analytical one. I have from little boys all the way up to 70-year-old men following me, right? And the thing is this, is that each one of them, they follow me for a reason, right? And each one of them takes certain teachings from different phases of my life, okay? So for a high school kid who wants to be, I don't know, spec ops guy, you know, either Navy or, you know, Army, whatever, they ask for my opinion on the mindset that they need to have. Right. So I find the younger ones, they care more about the action, the martial art, the fighting, the gun fighting. And then when I find like my older audience, right, the more mature ones, they're more interested in my mindset.
Sure.
And how did I become successful? Like businessmen, I talk to CEOs of successful business, and they're like, how were you able to take from going from war, depression, and entrepreneurial successful company? You know, how are you able to do that? And you know, Mickey, it's all mindset.
Yeah, indeed.
You know?
Indeed. It helps when you've got a background like yours. If you try to go into the supermarket business, I'm sure you'd be successful, but it wouldn't be the same. You'd have a huge learning curve and all that. So I mean, you got to make some smart decisions too, right?
Yeah, and that's what you just said, though. See, you said it earlier. Each phase of my life, right? I told you I got to reevaluate myself. You even said it. You had all these skills, right? How are you going to make a difference? What are you going to do? Okay? Mm-hmm. So that's what I was saying earlier. Each phase of your evolution in your life, you got to reevaluate. But you have to be truthful to yourself. What are you really good at? Right? What are you passionate about? Because I can get out, and being an Asian, I can probably be a good accountant. Anything with numbers, right? So, and that's what we do. Or I can do nails, right? Just
kind of racist, bro. Super racist. I'm gonna, as soon as we are finished with this, I'm gonna edit out that clip and I'm gonna have you say, hey, Tu just told me that this is what he's about to do. Go ahead.
Yeah. I can either A, be an accountant, punch numbers because we're really good at that, or I can start a nail shop and we're really good at. I'm just kidding.
That is so bad for you. Breathing.
But the thing is what are you good at? And what is your passion?
Yeah, man.
And what is your purpose? What is your end state when you're that 70-year-old man that you're too old now, you're too weak to get out of bed, and you're dying, because we're all going to die, right? Are you going to look back on your life and go, wow, Mickey, you did good. You did good for yourself. Look at all the people you affected, right? Because if you're like, wow, Mickey, you did good, you're a millionaire. That's not, for me, I'm just talking for me, that's not good enough for me. See, it's about the lives you affect and the people that you influenced and the legacy you left behind, not money, right? And what I also found is in your approach, if you're smart about it, obviously you're going to be successful. You know what I mean? If you're true about it. But it's the ones that go around and don't have a purpose and just a bad attitude. It doesn't matter what background you're from, Mickey. You see, you thank you for saying that about my background, but the thing is this, that's not who I am. That's not who I am at this point. It made me who I am to be here, right, to give you the influence. But how many veterans you seen with the same background got out and really not doing anything?
And that wasn't what I was saying. I wasn't saying you are successful because of your background. I'm saying you wisely chose you're utilizing all of that and not starting over from scratch. And you're right about what you just said, which is sad. But there's I feel that too many people just don't believe enough in themselves to I've got a lot of friends that people don't know, like 5 years ago, that guy was the upper echelons of some special operations unit. And now the guy's got a belly hanging over his belt, drinking a quart of whiskey every night to fall asleep, which there's all kinds of reasons that we know that happens. But like, it's like something in their spirit's so broken that what allowed them or propelled them to reach that high status in the military, they forgot that they can tap back into that determination, that indomitable spirit, that fighting through adversity, however you want to describe it, and become or change the circumstances. But it's like they could muster that to get that one prize, but they don't have the juice to muster it again to get what you're talking about.
The thing too is I was actually talking to one of my Navy friends about exactly the same subject. He was a quite accomplished operator, in the Navy, and great guy, served very intellectually, very smart guy. A lot of spec ops guys are very smart guys. His approach to life. But he asked me a question one time. He goes, I'm only good at deploying, going, neutralizing a threat. That's what I did as a commando. And I said, wow, you're right. But I want you to dissect that. Think about all the logistics and the leadership and the mechanics to put you overseas, coordinate a recruit a resistance or rebels or whatever, understand the infrastructure, understand the situation, find, fix, locate, and then come up with a probable course of action to brief to the United States to meet their goals. I say that requires a lot of leadership. That requires a lot of vision. You just have to take that leadership and that vision and apply it to your current world, in your current evolution of your life.
Yeah, man.
You see? So a lot of guys, when they get out, it's too hard When I say that is, let's say when you and I were both in the military. So you see, you get guidance all the time by your superiors, by the president, whoever is going to guide you in whatever country you're going to go in. Here's your mission. Here's your end state. Execute. Right? So you're getting detailed instructions through your whole life. Be here. This is your uniform. This is your time. You're going to be here. That's the military.
Mm-hmm.
But when nobody's telling you that anymore, and when the demons come after the war, right? Because they will, the demons will come, the darkness will come, right? Who's going to guide you? And that's why that teachings of Miyamoto Musashi meant so much to me, because I looked it for everywhere else. But when I looked at it within, that's when I became who I am. You see? So a lot of these veterans, they're used to so much a regulated routine and people telling them what to do. It's really hard to set out and believe in yourself. And that goes back to the teachings of Bushido, the teachings of ethics. It's serve a higher purpose. But the one thing that I want them to draw from is this: courage. Courage is the backbone of a warrior. If you don't have courage to set out and do the things that you believe in, then you're going to fail in this evolution of your life. Mm-hmm. That's what I see from the guys that fell, is they don't have the courage,
Let's leave with that. So there's a person listening, watching. They're in that position that we're talking about, be it a former military person or anybody else. And when you're mired in that mental see the light at the end of the tunnel or the path through the forest, whatever analogy you want, like, okay, courage to, fine. Like, but what do I do? Like, that's I think the part people always get hung up on. Like, what's your advice to that person right now?
First, you got to listen to your spirit. You have to say, are you happy in your life? Right? If you're happy, then conversation's over. You're happy. Good.
Right.
If you're not,
because they wouldn't be listening to this right now.
But let's just say you're not happy, right? And you want to change. Well, your spirit's going to tell you what you want to be. So let's just say a guy that wants to entrepreneur his own company, right? He has this belief in entrepreneur. Well, first, it's not just about courage, right? Because courage in the wrong spot can get you, can fail, right? Without proper planning, intelligence, and dissecting intelligence and developing a probable course of action off of intelligence, you can fail, right? So I can go into a country and try to find, fix, and finish. If my course of action sucks and my intelligence sucks, then I can have all the courage. I'm going to fail. You see? Mm-hmm. So that's called strategy. So first, it comes to what you said, Mickey. First, you need to dive within and see what you're good at and what you want to be in life. Where is the Mickey in 10 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? So I look at it brackets of my life. And evolution of my life goes into phases of my life. Like, there was an army phase of my life. There was a train-up phase of my life into the spec ops. And then from the spec ops, the war phase of my life. And then afterwards, the depression and the getting over it phase, getting over your loss and your friendships that you lost, right? So then now it became my evolution as a teacher. So where do I go after I stop being a teacher? Because physically we can't do it for the rest of our lives. So you have to evaluate who you are in each phase of your life, right? Because the older we get, we're going to lose some of those natural abilities, like vision, strength, coordination, right? You understand this. So first, look at yourself, look at who you are and what are your strengths and weaknesses, and then look at your goal. What do you want to do? So let's say I want to entrepreneur my own company. I believe in launching this piece of equipment. Okay. Then develop a course of action. You're obviously going to need some kind of finance to launch it. So you need to either A, start saving, or B, pick up a job for my military, pick up a contract job, find that flexibility, right? Remember that money, the flexibility that's going to give you that ability to to invest in the things you believe in. You see? So along with courage comes strategy. Okay? You have to strategize your life. Okay? So you have to look at who you are, look at your strengths and weaknesses, look at your end state, and then develop a course of action based off on the intelligence. And intelligence being, all right, you want to launch this new product. Is there a similar product out there? And what companies your competitions? Right? That's understanding the situation. Right? And then develop a course of action how you're going to launch it. You know, so that's what I'm saying is having the courage to set out and do things, but if you want a step-by-step instruction, is really to really evaluate who you are, evaluate your strengths, evaluate the situation, come up with a course of action based off of your mission statement, which is your end state. You can see I militarize everything.
I have the same basic premise that I say: define the goal, create actionable steps to achieve the goal, apply action to the actionable steps, and then from time to time reanalyze and reassess and change those actionable steps if need be. But
that's right.
That's the interesting thing. I think too many people, these veterans included, forget it's all the same thing. Whether you want to be Bruce Lee, or you want to be a Hollywood actor, or you want to be a famous pianist or whatever, it's the same processes to make that happen. And it ain't easy if you want to.
And you have to be willing to work harder than anybody you know, right? And you have to be willing to sacrifice, you know, because we sacrifice, I could tell you, Rifty and I sacrificed so much to be where we're at today.
I'm sure.
I mean, we work so hard and we travel so much, right? But she understands this is my path. This is my calling in this evolution. If I don't reach to be a teacher for many, right, then that's the path of a warrior, Mickey, right? That's the path of warriors. First, being understanding that you want to be a warrior, choosing that path, right? Mark Twain said the two most important days in your life is the day you're born and the day you find out why, right? So first, if you finding what you want to be in life and developing that, and then in the book of ground, in the teachings of martial art, is grounding yourself in the teachings, right? So whatever it is, right? If you want to be a doctor, ground yourself in the teachings. You want to be a warrior, ground yourself in the teachings. Getting there, becoming a warrior, right? I'll talk about the warrior's path. Becoming a warrior, fighting the wars, passing the war, right? Look past the war mentally, but then in the martial art teaching is to become a teacher, to become a scholar. And that's where my path is now. And that's truly just, if you look at all the past warriors ahead of me, that's the path of martial artists, right? After you've done it all and you got a little experience, you got to give back. That's the teachings of Budo, right? Budo is the art of war. It's the teachings of war. Bu means to intercept the spear, to fight against evil. Do means to take your life experience and give back and be harmonized with the universe, right? So that's my teachings. I'm in that's the latter stages, right? Where now I'm trying to harmonize myself with the universe and to give back my teachings before the moments pass that I can't do it anymore.
Oh, you got plenty of life left in you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're young and virile.
I am. And, you know, the thing too is that, you know, I try to stay healthy. I eat right. I try to get, you know, proper sleep. I meditate to clear my mind, you know. So, you know, with the education now in the social media world and the information age, I mean, there's so much information out there to be healthy.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you and I were raised, right, health wasn't a big thing for me. You know, like when I was a little boy, nobody knew about health, right? You see Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, oh, that guy's healthy. But nobody really understood about true health, like eat right, proper sleep, you know, clear the mind, because the mind can be very toxic, you know? So
it's what we're talking about now. I've talked about this with people before. Everything you're talking about, Bushido, it's, if anybody honestly, in my opinion, analyzes the things we're talking about long enough, they should arrive at the same conclusion. like you said, full circle. Like if you're being honest, looking at like self-defense with a weapon, why? So I can live. But why do you want to live? Because you want to live because you enjoy living and you want to see your children. So like you start to really analyze like the why behind everything. Eventually you should come to the point of what you're talking about, taking care of yourself. It's not just like fighting because I have to. It's, well, I want to enjoy my life. Thus, I should be healthy and get proper sleep and meditate and get off the couch and go for a run and do all those things. Like instead of the myopic approach of weapons training or going to the gym and lifting weights, it's to that whole totality of a life well lived, man. I totally appreciate what you just said. You said it.
Also, like, you know, some of our friends, you know, some badass spec ops team guy got out. Now you say he's drinking, you know, he's overweight. Is he still a warrior, Mickey? Or did he step off that path, my friend? You see? Because what I just told you is the path of a warrior, to be a teacher, to be a scholar, right? I never stepped off that path. I have strayed from the path. I have. That path is very hard, you see, because the path is selfless. It's always thinking about others. And, you know, I'm a human being. I have strayed off that path. You see, I was full of hate for a very long time. So hate blinds you, you see? So in my teaching now as a Ronin, it's more than just movements in martial arts and gunfighting. It's about educating the person's mind and to make them better and to give them a snapshot of my life, you know, because if I didn't share my life lessons, let's say I got out and I worked for some kind of agency where I can't talk about my life, right? Because that's where I was for 23 years. It was just more on that path. So let's just say that nobody ever knew the story of Ronin, about a refugee that escaped from Vietnam that loved his country so much he fought for his country, for those oppressed. And that story is never told, right? Don't you think we need to hear that story?
I do.
In America right now, because that's how America was founded. I'm just a modern day American story. It happened in my lifetime. See, your ancestors came here before your time. They struggled and they fought against, you know, the obstacles to becoming American, and they became American. That's where you were born, right? Your ancestors fought through that. It just happened in my life. That's all.
Right.
And I'm a modern day American story, so the story needs to be shared. You know, to make other people aware and better.
When you writing the book?
So I talked to my agent about the book, and you know, we went to a few writers, and they're not what I want, you know. And then I started script my own writing, but obviously I'm too busy. So we want to release it next year. Like, we want to just really harp down on it next year because my mother's getting older, and I want to hear her. You know, she's a lot in the book. So along with that, a possible Canadian company wants to film the story of my life as well, documentary. So we'll see. We'll see how we want to approach that. Obviously, there's a certain portion of my career that was very sensitive. So we got to see how we're going to clear that with DOD. How can I get across the story without exposing certain objects, you know,
Sure.
Just because I kind of lived in that world for so long.
I look forward to it.
Thank you. And you know, the book is going to be more about humanity. It's going to be more about life than I kicked in this door, I killed this guy, I done this, you know, because there's too many of those.
Doing that.
Yeah, there's too many of those, but there's not enough stories about life and how to become a better human being. And I almost want to structure the book like the Book of Five Rings, where I talk about phases and evolutions of my life, where there's a Book of Ground where I talk about my training, right? And how I struggled through the training physically, like some of the physical aspect of training, because I was a small little Asian guy, right? Malnourished as a little boy. So I didn't grow up properly. You know, I lost, you know, certain strengths and sizes, but through the evolutions of my training, obviously I got into a Western style body where I was able to defeat that. But the thing was this, I did come in. My bone density isn't, as strong as Westerners. Well, we felt that when I was carrying up to 400-pound loads on my back. I had stress fractures, but how was I able to push through broken bones and everything for higher purpose, and that needs to be said. That needs to be said, especially for the younger generation that wants to serve a higher purpose, and they feel that they're genetically insuperior. Well, I could tell you, I was genetically insuperior because I was raised malnourished as a little boy. I starved. Bruce Lee was the same way. He was so small because he was malnourished as a little child, when Japan was taking over China.
Mm-hmm.
So can you imagine if Bruce Lee would have wrote a story on his struggles as a child, coming to America? So I want to break it down into each lesson, because if I just blanket the story of Ronin, it never really dives into a lesson. And I want each book to have, like, when they leave, that presence, like what you and I talked about today. Courage, right? That's probably the lesson of the day. Courage to believe in and do the things you want. So each book will have a lesson from the book of martial arts. Courage, compassion, humanity, So I really want to break down my teachings like that, but also talk about the special forces, because obviously that had a lot to do with my life, and how I feel about things and my skill sets.
It's going to be awesome when you get it done.
Thank you. I look forward to it, and and I grew, with Ronin, we grew so much, but the thing is, I never want to lose traction with the people. I never want to lose connection, because that's the people is what I fought for.
Little guys, man. Don't forget us little guys. As
you whatever. You're not a little guy, but the whole thing is like, but that's what it was about, Mickey, right? That's what I fought for, the people. So now I'm Ronin. I'm going to continue to fight for the people, just in a different way.
I like it. We need more guys to take up that mantle, and I think there's plenty of guys doing it, but they're doing it with a lot of ego involved, not like you are. And there needs to be more dudes doing it for the right reasons. That's what changes the country and the world, and will proliferate the goodness that we were once known for.
Yeah. So what's next for you?
That's interesting that you ask. I mean, long story short, continuing what we're doing. The world does not need another gun trainer. The world, not that I'm not telling people, like, don't get into that business. I'm saying, like, if I stop training firearms tomorrow, the world will be okay. So I enjoy doing that. The stuff that we're doing right now is more important to me. I use the firearms as a pulpit, I guess. And so I have slowly been getting more into this, the cerebral stuff. And that's, I think, what people will see more of from me is I'll still continue to train. I mean, I'm on the range myself 3, 4, 5 times a week. So I do have some knowledge to pass on in that capacity, but there's plenty of guys that know a lot more about shooting guns than I do. So.
But your approach, Mickey, is the way you teach too. Like, there's a lot of trainers, including myself, I train on the way to guns, and each one of us approach things different. I love the way you approach things. You break it down, basics, it's very proficient. You also go into the advanced stuff too. But you concentrate a lot on mindset. I see a lot of your, like, crime, when you post crime videos and, threats, because that's what we're facing in the world.
Yeah.
So you're teaching your students the realities of it. And I love your approach. But what I like about what you just said was you just reevaluated who you are in this evolution and where you want to be. Right? You don't want to be just another gun trainer.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's absolutely.
I wasn't trying to demean anybody, and that's not what you were saying. But I just
you see more.
Not, yeah, it's not the end all for me, and it's not. There's only so many hours that we can stand on a range shooting targets in the day and in my life, and so I'll continue. I can't see not ever doing that, but we're talking about some leadership seminars. We're talking about this S12 event that we've been putting on is It's like a really cool way that we connect with a group of like 30, 40 people in a real intimate way for a weekend. And some of the stuff that we talk about are things we're talking about today. We talk about physical health and things like that. And then, of course, the shooting and combative stuff. But and that we're not the only people doing that, of course. But like that's been a really great. That's personally for me, I've got a lot of satisfaction from that. But the leadership stuff, and it's not like I don't want to go try to tell people how to run Fortune 500 companies because that's not my wheelhouse, but leading oneself, you know, what you're talking about. And I see so many people. My son showed me something today on social media. I'd never seen it. Kid's got hundreds of thousands of followers. He's this skinny little hillbilly kid, and I'm not being insulting because that's exactly what he wants you to think. And it's him and his buddies kicking each other in the nuts, and him and his buddies going to a buffet and just being idiots. And there's hundreds of thousands of people staring at this stuff, and it's comical, haha. But like, why are not him, for example, but there's tons of people in our genre of social media. I'm like lumping all the like gun combative people together that I feel are not utilizing the platforms that they have for good in any way. And they don't have to. It's up to them. It's their life to do as they choose. And there's nothing wrong with comedy and having fun, but to me, it's almost like if you have the ability to do something that affects some kind of change for good in the world, you're almost that's almost a evil in a sense to me, you know, like shit, I could have done something. I mean, it's like had that Russian boat said, those that, you know, boat full of Vietnamese people, you know, some Russian guys say, them, they will sink soon. That they had the ability to do something good. They did. And then thousands of lives were changed. So I want to, and it pisses people off because sometimes I call people out like, the are you doing, man? What are you doing? You've got the ability to do something good. So that's kind of where I'm in long and short of it, trying to direct my efforts. Because shit, man, like I never thought I'd have 60,000 people wanting to give a shit about the things I had to say. And not that you know how the social media thing works. There's a lot of it's perception and it's not real, but man, like what if you and I and 20 of our buddies all started to like push the same message, and then like as we already know, things compound, like that shit changes worlds. 56 guys signed the Declaration of Independence. Only 56 of them, you know. I think about stuff like that, and now here we have and they're communicating with pigeons, and they didn't have printing presses, you know, and we've got the ability to talk to millions of people in theory instantaneously at the drop of a hat. Like, how derelict are we in our duties as men, as patriots, as citizens, as fathers, as husbands, as neighbors, if we can't do something with the tools at hand?
Exactly.
That's the shit I'm thinking about.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it, man. And, you know, like I said, Mickey, you are making a positive change, man. You know, I'm a huge fan of yours. I see you, sir. We're good friends. I admire you, and I admire everything. You know, we just need more people like that, you know. And some of my veteran friends, you know, some of my Green Berets and Navy SEAL friends, they're doing it. I see it in their own way.
For sure they are. Yeah, I'm not saying that that's not the case, but yeah.
But then you see other companies that go out and they just think they're, you know, like I said, they have the ego, but you know, each their own. And I just know like my path, my direction where I want to go. For me, I want to educate. I want to be a teacher. I want to be humble, and I want to continue to develop my knowledge internally. You know, so it's good, man. It's all good.
I can't wait to see you again in person. I look forward to it. Tell Ruthie I said thank you for sharing you with us this morning, and we'll catch you soon, man. If you guys have not followed on the social media, again, it's Ronin Tactics everywhere. Basically, you'll find him. Just punch that into the search bar and you'll find him. Check out a class. He does tons of training across the country and see what he's got to say beyond this podcast. If you haven't subscribed to this podcast, please do. If you have not shared us with a friend, shame on you. Final word?
No, I just appreciate Mickey. Thank you for, inviting me on. Thank you for thinking of me like that. Also to your viewers, thanks for viewing this and listening. Hopefully, my life lessons and along with Mickey's life lesson can help. I know that people face hard times, but hard times don't last forever. You got to believe in yourself and have the courage, right? Because that's one of the basics of a warrior's ethics. Have the courage to set out and change if you want, or set out to do the things you believe in. So thank you for allowing me to share that. And thank you again, Mickey, for having me on.
Thanks, brother. It means a lot. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, brother. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Bye now.
Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., CarryTrainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com.